believe it or not, I had to hire an Uber driver to go to Kansas City and pick up the part and bring it back. This is an interesting story. As you know, I've been having trouble with my last mechanic, and I made the executive decision not to use them anymore. But that doesn't mean that everything is solved. Things keep breaking, and I'm still dealing with the horrible nature of their repairs, which you'll see here. This is what happens when a mechanic half-asses his work. Now you'll have to forgive me, I'm just coming off a sinus infection and I sound like a bullfrog, but I got a good 70-degree day down here in Georgia, so I thought I'd do this video when it was 70 and not 12. What you saw there was failure. And it was failure because they used the wrong part. They used the wrong belt. So let's get out of the truck and I'll show you the belt and I'll show you the part and I'll show you why it failed. And I actually got a new belt. I'm going to put a new belt on, and I have my spare belt on, which you should always carry a couple of spares. And we'll make this right, and I'll tell you the story about this whole repair because it's actually quite interesting. Believe it or not, I actually did wash the truck, but it didn't hold. It looked good for about 12 and a half hours, and then the snow started to melt, and now it's back looking like it did. So this is my spare belt that's on here right now. It's a new idler pulley, and this is the belt they put on there. Now, see if you can figure out what the problem is. What happened is the belt actually moved out of those grooves and started to walk, but it didn't walk all the way. It stayed in the grooves on one pulley, walked in the grooves on the other, and consequently it shifted on the idler pulley, which put a lot of stress on the bearings. It's made to run a 12-spline belt, not the 6-spline or whatever it was they stuck on there. This is an example of the half-ass work that led me to do what I had to do. Now, had the pulley stayed centered like it should have been, it would have rode around right here in the middle of this idler pulley. But it did not. You see all the space here. So what happened, instead of staying in the center, which would have been fine, it walked off to the side. When it walked off to the side, it burned out the bearings. I don't know if you can hear that. And it just burned it up. In fact, when I spin it, just bearing material just still's falling out. That's why I'm wearing these gloves, because the stuff just gets everywhere. It's like graphite dust. So that's what happened there. So now I've got to put a new belt on, but I've got a new belt, so let's check the belt and make sure it's the right length. I've got my breaker bar. There's a little 1/2-inch hole on the end of this that you just stick this in and give it a twist, and she'll come right off. The belt will come right off. The hardest thing about getting a belt out of here is just getting it around the fan. It takes a little bit of time and a little bit of patience, but you'll get it if you just take a little bit of time. Don't cut it, because you're gonna need this like I did. I got the new one next to the old one. It's kind of hard to see, but I did hold them up and kind of stretch them out, and they're the same size. So let's get the new one on. If this is your first time putting a belt on, it can get a little tricky because sometimes you forget which way a serpentine belt runs. So just trial and error, but you'll be all right. don't forget to check all your pulleys while your belts are off. Give them a little spin. Doing that, you can check the free play and you know, make sure that nothing's going out. This alternator's fairly new, but there's a little bit of a squeak in it, so we're gonna have to keep an eye on that. This is a remand unit, so these do go out, so I'll keep an eye on that. You can see the belt's in. Make sure before you fire it up that it's all seated properly in the right grooves between the rails. Both sides are good, and it's riding properly on the idler pulley. Water pump's good, alternator's good, everything's good. The spare belt goes back in the box, and that goes in the trash. As usual, you always break down when it's most convenient and at the best time of the day to do it. This was no exception. I broke down on, say, Saturday afternoon. I made it over to Kingdom City. And so I get over to Kingdom City, and they're like, we're not going to be able to get you in. I said, look, MHC in Columbia closes at 5. So if you order the part now, I said, I know which part it is. Order the parts, that way it's here. And they're like, that's a good idea, so they did. So they called me in about 6 o'clock, and they had sent over the wrong part. So they started making phone calls, and they found the idler pulley in Kansas City, which was 158 miles away. And I was like, that's a ways. How long will it take to, how much will it cost to have it delivered, or what happens? So he ended up getting me the quote on that. It was going to cost $500 to have it delivered to from MHC Kenworth in Kansas City on Front Street to the Petro in Kingdom City. I was like, $500? I said, I can't do that. That's just ridiculous. You know, that was more than what the part cost. The part cost about $400, about $4.50. And I was like, I can get an Uber to do it. I can rent a car. I can get a U-Haul. Or I said, we can just wait till tomorrow morning, Sunday morning, when they open up. They're in O'Fallon, Missouri, and get the part from there. Well, there was a couple from Landstar there. They lived in Columbia. They were getting their truck, just their 120-day service. And they said, hey, you know, our son lives in Columbia. He drives for Uber. He'll do it. Let's see what he'll do it for. I said, okay. So they made a phone call. He agreed to do it for $150. 3 hours later, this goofy kid rolls in with the part. I gave him $160. 10 minutes later, I was back in the parking lot, going to bed. You know, sometimes things just work out. Sometimes it's divine intervention. And I believe this was the latter. So it cost me $160 to have it delivered. And all in all, it cost me $611 plus shop time and all that, environmental fees, whatever else they want to tack on. So yeah, it's a little on the expensive side, but it's at a TA shop. But I got the thing fixed. But I'm just a little irritated that it was completely preventable, because I had replaced that idler pulley not too long ago. And that's how fast putting the wrong part, just because it works doesn't mean it's right. You know, that's how putting the wrong part can wreck your day. I've been asked several times if I planned on bringing a lawsuit against these people that did this work. And it had crossed my mind, considering how much money I'd lost, how much the repairs had cost, you know, just downtime and all that. We're talking a very, very significantly high number. But At the end of the day, I got to thinking about what it would cost me in the long run. Got a little something there. Yeah, I could sue them. And I believe I do have a case. I have a lot of corresponding paperwork, and I can prove a lot of fraudulent things. And I already have. But I have to live in this town. I still have to get the truck fixed. I need to find a local place I can take the truck to. And when you live in a town like mine where word gets around rather quickly, a lot of people will be a lot more hesitant to work on your stuff. In this case, would that happen? It's a 50-50 shot. But even if I decided to do a lawsuit, I would lose a whole lot more time and money, you know, trying to get this done. And I just decided that we're going to let this sleeping dog lie. This particular ordeal, after a certain amount of time, this became my fault. I remember seeing the belt. I trusted them to do the job, and I grabbed the truck and I went to work the next day because, well, I needed to go to work. And I remember seeing the belt, and I remember being very upset about it, thinking I needed to change it. But then life happened. It slipped my mind. So at the end of the day, this was the workmanship wasn't my fault, but it was my fault for not correcting it immediately. And after I saw this the first time before it went out, because like I said, I spaced it off, I remember that was about the time I started thinking that I needed to formulate a plan to figure out what was going on, which I discussed in my last video. So at the end of the day, this was my fault. The workmanship wasn't, but the fact that I didn't correct it when I knew I needed to, that was my fault. So I guess you know, lesson learned. At the end of the day, it's up to you to make sure the job's done correctly. I didn't follow up. You know, and I know I should have. That I don't have an excuse. I ate, what, almost $900 because, well, $800 because I didn't follow up. And I didn't hold the shop accountable for their bad work at the time. I have now. So I trusted the shop, which intellectually I knew I shouldn't have. And lesson learned. We don't do business with them anymore. At the end of the day, it comes down to you holding your shop accountable and you having to check the work, which I didn't do. You saw the result. So lesson learned, like I said. I hope you have better luck with your shop, and I hope things go well with you, and things are actually going better. The weather's warmer. A little bit of a cold sinus infection. It's all good. So I appreciate it. Thanks for watching. I hope things are going well for you, and we'll catch you next video.